So this is somewhat of a follow-up video to my previous upload about base attack on weapons. But of course when it comes to re-rolling stats onto weapons, base attack is both very hard to get, especially as a low spender, and there are of course 3 other slots you will have to fill alongside it either way. So knowing what to take aside from base attack is a very important thing to think through and know what is best when deciding on saving a roll or rolling something away. I thought doing this video as a tier list would be the best option, but when you actually look through the stats, if you go here, they would just look terrible in a tier list format, and people would have no idea what's going on, especially with the anti-counters and yeah, the reductions. Way too hard to tell. So I think this is a job for the notepad. It's probably the most logical and aesthetically pleasing way to do it. So first up is obviously easy. It's base attack. If you haven't watched my previous video detailing base attack in full, I would advise watching it either now or afterwards. It is by far and away the best stat you can get on weapons, even at lower numbers realistically. Even a 2 base attack is probably better than a capped attack stat and anything that can go with it. Just going back over the numbers I went over in that video, if you're attacking with say 1300% inf attack and 700% total attack, which is quite high admittedly, but just so it's a round number, the value of 1 base attack will be 20% attack. So the maths are fairly complicated to get to this conclusion. It's all detailed in that other video. Even like a 3 base attack would yield effectively the equivalent value of 60% infantry attack, which means that base attack rolls will dwarf any of these other options. Even if there's multiple of the better alternatives at capped value, it would have to be a very low base attack roll and the most exceptional alternative rolls alongside it as the other option to justify not keeping the base attack. So base attack is clearly in first position by quite a distance as well. Past this point it gets a lot trickier, and that is after all the point of this video, I guess. It also becomes quite specific to meta, your account, what you encounter most, how you've built your account, like what you're going for. So I guess I will generally approach this through my own thought processes. So I'm built as mono. At the time of recording there is also very few bows in the meta. That they are out there, but you don't encounter them that much. Melee units does definitely seem to be the most prominent build right now. So for me, the second best option is anti-counter. So what this does is reduce the damage you take from the unit that counters the troop type of the weapon, basically. So you will, by default, take 200% damage from your counter. Where do I see it? It's here. Yeah. So as imp, you will deal 200% damage to spearmen. So cavalry will deal 200% to me as infantry. If I had a capped anti-counter weapon, this would drop to 192%, and you can obviously then keep racking that number up. And if you have maxed anti-counter on 5 weapons, you could drop this to only, it's still significant, but 160% damage taken from your counter. Because if you're built mono, your biggest obstacle obviously is being countered. Like if you're full imp, someone running full cav into you would need, they only need a certain level of stats to overcome you at that point. So the goal is to sort of negate your one weakness as much as humanly possible, so your build is more universally useful effectively. And that thought process will come into play a bit further down as well in terms of where I rank other things. Let me go back to the weapon page. Past this, it is probably for me the attack. It's sort of close between that and health, honestly, because health you get 10% more at max, obviously. So I'm sort of assuming maximum value when ranking these. Is kind of hard to rank them against each other if they're of varying like levels. Like you can have a 6% anti-counter versus a 20% attack versus a 6% health. It's much easier to just assume they're all capped and then rank them against each other like that. So for me, it will be troop attack, not total attack. You will notice total attack is a quarter of the value. There's 4 unit types, but that really makes it lose value, to be honest. So the reason I have troop attack above health, even though it's 10% lower, is there's a few reasons. It can have value if it's on the back line. So things like bleed can run like inf cav. Multi-line weakness is very popular at the moment, especially in AC, which is one of the more popular PvP game modes. Obviously, it's where a lot of people get the bulk of their PvP experience. It's good for castle holding as well, and stuff like CCS and KVK, and even city defense and stuff like that. So having attack on the backline on various weapons, be able to switch in and out of what that front line is, obviously has inherent value. And attack just scales into so many more things nowadays than it used to, especially now base attack too. Like 1 point or 1% of attack is now multiplying the base stats even further than before, which gives it an edge over health and defense even more so compared to previously. Obviously, if base health gets added into the game, then that will get corrected a little bit and they'll be back on the same playing field. But I think for now, attack is just well ahead of everything else. Health is certainly very good still though, and would be what I put next, especially for mono. It's the next best stat after attack. I think most people at this point know that. There's not too much to analyze about it, to be honest. It's just more health for your units to have, more damage they can take. And after that it will be actually troop defense, which this is where it will start getting controversial, and I know for a fact there's going to be people watching this right now going, "You are stupid. What are you talking about? Defense is terrible. What about the reductions? What about total attack?" My thought process on this is, we'll get to total attack when we get to it. I think total attack is just too overstated. Like it's 6 times more defense. I did some testing previously. I could maybe do another video on this, or a video on this in future actually showing these findings, but for me 1 slot of troop defense, which is 40% in refinement, tested marginally better than 1 slot of total attack, which is 15% in refinement. So when it's, and that's, what is that, like 2.66% or 2.66 times higher on defense's side, and here it's 6 times higher on defense's side. I think that you're going to get more bang for your buck out of the 6 times more stats, even if it's defense versus attack, if you're built mono. If you're running triple weakness, I would have total attack in this spot next. So maybe I can qualify that. If mono, total attack, if running e.g. triple weakness, I guess. And the reason I'd have it over the reductions, or bow anti-counter, if bows were prominent, would be here. They're not prominent. I barely ever face them, especially in stuff like AC. So that could change in future for sure if bows become more popularized again. The reductions is the real debate here in my opinion, and I will put them next. So for me it will be the mirror health reduction. So it's probably easier to show this. because I'm an inf guy on an inf weapon. So for me, this would be inf health reduction. The reason it's below troop defense is because it will obviously only help you against one of the 4 unit types. So whilst if you are facing infantry, this will clearly be better. It obviously won't be better if you're facing cav, spear, bows. You could maybe somewhat overlook spear, because you should be beating your counter regardless. But I still think gaining value in all scenarios bumps it up a little bit above the reductions, just because of how situational they all are. And then I'll put what counters you... How do I phrase this? Counter health reduction, I'll just say it like this, e.g. cav health reduction when you're in. The reason this goes below mirror is because you should lose to your counter, basically. Whereas you shouldn't necessarily lose to your mirror. So I think the extra stats against your mirror will... I should probably specify this as well. E.g. imp versus imp. Reducing your mirror will just help you in more situations than reducing your counter, because you should lose to your counter the majority of time. The same thought process is I'm going to put what you counter yourself health reduction probably at the bottom, because you realistically should be beating that regardless. And stuff like this is going to help against your counter more anyway. So that just has a lot lower value. It starts getting tricky here. And it honestly depends on what you face the most. So I'm going to put bow anti-counter here. But realistically, if you never face bows, it's probably like total health and then total defense or something like that. They very much could go above bow and anti-counter, just because you need to be facing bows for that to get any value, of course. But generally, this is how I think I would look at it. And then below that, bow health reduction, and then what you counter health reduction, I guess is the best way to put it. E.g. spear when you're in. And I think overall this is pretty much how I look at it as a priority list when I'm re-rolling myself. And it is very subjective, that's for sure. This is definitely not like a Bible you should follow. It's so situational depending on your account. Like if you are so strong that you're confident you will consistently win your own mirror, like say you're the biggest infantry account in the game, no one has bigger inf than you, you know that, you have like 55 infantry base attack on your weapons, your counter health reduction will inherently then be higher value than the mirror, because you don't need help in the mirror, and you're so strong you can beat more and more people who counter you anyway. So this will gain massive amounts of value, potentially above like troop defense and whatnot. Because you'll want to just reach a point where, even as mono, you just beat your counter anyway, which a fair few people are starting to reach that point as mono type. And it's definitely a viable way of building your account at these very high pay grade levels. I'm looking back over it and thinking about anything I'd tweak. I sort of want to move total health up, like maybe 1 or 2 spots. It's really hard to judge things like this, depending on... It's so situational according to what you face. Obviously, if you're facing your counter, that's going to be better than this. Obviously, if you're facing bows, that's going to be better than this. But if you don't, that will be better than them. So it's really hard to too rank, to be honest. I guess I'll just leave it at that for now. And yeah, maybe, hopefully, at least thinking through the thought processes can help some people out there, even if people disagree with my conclusions in places, which I'm sure they will.